just to get us warmed up, look at the similarity in Tibetan chanting to our chanting, right? In Tantra and Shaivism, right? Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padme Siddhi Hum, right? Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padme Siddhi Hum. 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 See how it wakes up? The same lotus is in the heart, the same feelings in the body, the same tranquility, the same Kundalini beam going up the Vajra Shushumna. The same, it's the same. You know, we just call it by different names. Isn't that wonderful? So, today I'm going to talk about a particular legendary hero of Tibetan Buddhism, right? Sometimes called Guru Rinpoche, but we know him as Padma Sambhava, right? He was called Padma Sambhava because he was born without parents. He was born in a lotus. He came out of a lotus, right? What does that mean? It's an esoteric term, isn't it? All of you know what lotus means, that he was born out of the heart. He was born into pure bliss, into just awakening. The story goes that a great king was looking for the secret to immortality, the jewel, the Manipura of jewel of immortality. And he found a lotus with a baby in it, and that baby was Padma Sambhava. Apparently the baby was fully grown and came out a mature man and said, "Hello, I am Padma Sambhava," right? And this is how it goes. But the reality is a little different, you know. He was born in Kashmir, right? In a place called Udayana, right? Which is the Buddhist gateway to India. So why was Kashmir famous for Buddhism? Because Kanishka and the Kushans hold the fourth Buddhist council in 72 AD at Kundalvana, which is just in Ladakh Leh area. And it is where Mahayana Buddhism was born, right there, right, in the 4th century. And from here, Kumara Jiva took Buddhism to China in 400. So the Chinese school that came later, that later became Chan and all the 5 mountains and all that in China, that then becomes Zen, comes from here, from Kashmir, right? It goes into those areas. And in the 8th, 9th century, Padma Sambhava takes Buddhism to Tibet from here. So the whole of northern India and China gets Buddhism from this place in India, right? This place. And you still have beautiful gateways of Buddhist stupas and architecture in Kashmir. Most were destroyed by the Muslims, but many are still available, you know. The famous Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan that were demolished by the Taliban, you know, this is all that's left of the great stupas of, you know. But if you go to Ladakh and Leh, you see the beautiful monasteries are still there, you know, that are still standing there. If you go to get a chance, you can go to Ladakh and Leh, and it's easy to go there. And so just think about it, right? Kashmir, northern part of Kashmir, which is now Afghanistan, is in this area, Hindu Kush area, was called Udayana, right? And this was a major Buddhist trading routes on the Silk Route. Major. These areas were, this is the Silk Route, okay? So goods would come from Xianyan to Samarkand all the way, and goods would come from India through to join these things, and Kashgar was a major center, and Buddhism spread along these routes, right? So Buddhism was the religion that spread because it was a brotherhood. It was easy to handle. They didn't have a god. You can have your local gods and still be a Buddhist. You know, that was a great thing about Buddhism. You didn't have to give up your religion. And this area, Udayana, was famous for Buddhist scholarship, very famous. And into this was born this Padma Sambhava, very mythical character, very little known about his early life, very little known. And it is said that that this area, I mean, just think about it. This is the Indian mountains, Himachal Pradesh, right? There's Kashmir right there, and there's Udayana in the north, right? So the trade routes were not only through north and south, but across the Himalayas into Tibet, China, into Bhutan. All these were connected, right? So look, there's Chandigarh, little Chandigarh. Just, I mean, people don't understand that how close these things were to each other, right? You know, if you want to study Shakti and Shaivism, you go here. If you want to study the Vajrayana Buddhism, you go here, you know. And the whole teaching was that this man who comes out of Udayana makes an appearance in a place called Rawelsar, which is a lake, right? A lake in Himachal Pradesh. That's still there. This is the lake. Beautiful place, right? And there, look, on the mountain is Padma Sambhava, right there, sitting there, right up there. He's beautiful, isn't he? And there's Padma Sambhava. So the story goes, he comes to this lake and he meets the Princess Mandarva, right? Who he initiates into the Kaula Tantra of, we know Kaula Tantra from Kashmir. He integrates Buddhism and Kaula Tantra in his own heady way, and he brings it and he initiates her, and part of it is a sexual yogic ritual. And they go into ecstasy doing this together, right? So a lot of the famous paintings you see are Mandarva and Guru Rinpoche. That time he was called Padma Sambhava in ecstatic bliss union, like this, right? So a lot of the pictures you will see are not Shiva and Shakti. They are always these two, because they believed in what later will be known as a form of Tantric Buddhism called Vajrayana Buddhism, that would awaken the spinal cord, the Kundalini, through sexual union and through inner steadiness, right? That would happen. So he initiates the Princess Bandharva, right? And there's ecstatic imagery right across the Himalayas of this, right? It's wonderful. You cannot miss it whenever you go to Nepal or Tibet or Bhutan or anywhere. It's always there. But Mandarva was the first of two major tantric consorts he had, right? You know, and he brought this, and the story goes that Mandarva was a princess of a local king. And when the local king found out that they were doing sexual yogic practices, shock, horror, right? He set fire to the entire lake to burn them down, right? Right? Because they were supposed to be in the middle of a lake in an island, sitting on a lotus, apparently doing their thing, right? And he tried to burn them down. And when the fire cleared, they were still doing the thing, you know, and that was some serious tantric sex going on. Fire did not burn them. Nothing burnt them. It was like, whoa. So then he bowed to him and said, you are my master. Teach me everything. Teach me everything. He says, here, have my daughter. But the daughter didn't need him. The daughter was already an awakened yogini. This is the beginning of what is called the Dakini culture. So she was the first of the Dakinis that awoke Padma Sambhava, right? So he had the Kashmiris first, you know. This guy went through a lot of women. He had the Kashmiris first, then he gets Mandarva, right? And Mandarva and he, you know, live peacefully. And the legend of this man spreads, you know, this is the story. And meanwhile, Tibet is slowly moving towards Buddhism, right? Tibet has not received Buddhism yet. Tibet didn't become fully Buddhist till the 12th century, right? People think Tibet has been doing Buddhism since Buddha. No. 12th century, Tibet gets Buddha, right? But 8th century, 9th century, they're moving into Buddhism, right? They're building monasteries. And the religion of Tibet is called Bon, right? Bon is an animistic, you know, all the Bhairavas, all the Dakinis, all that come from Bon, right? And it goes right up to Gobi Desert. It's a shamanic religion that goes right up through China, Russia, Siberia, all the way to America. It's like the same one single kind of shamanic culture, right? So that is why if you go and see Navajo paintings in Arizona, or you see Tibetan Tanka art, they look very similar because it is one mandala, sacred geometry, sacred shamanic ritual culture, right? That spread all over the world, that took Amanati muscaria mushrooms, that did all kinds of things, right? So this was culture, that's where we get Santa Claus from. You know that, right? Because Santa Claus was the Amanati muscaria mushroom, right? The red hat, he'd come down the chimney in the igloo and give the good stuff, and they'd all take it in winter and whee, and it was all, so he was the great guy, right? This guy. So Tibet is now, and they need somebody to come and do battle with the local demons and born beasts and all, so that Buddhism can thrive, right? Aha, next chapter of our story, right? At this time, so we get this guy. Oh, by the way, this is the statue, my favorite statue. He came to me in many, many visions. Once you start meditating on him today, he will appear to you, okay? He will come. He comes. He and Bama Kepa come. They come, right? They will come to you, right? So be aware of that. They will come and discuss things or fight with you. One of the two. They'll do all kinds of yogic fighting also with you. They're a lot of fun. So he gets invited to a new monastery that is trying to be built in an area called Samye, right? Up here, right? So he goes all the way from Ravelsar to up there, but without Mandarva. He's alone now. Time for a new tantric consort. And he goes up there and he gets there in Samye, and Samye, this is the monastery they finally built in Samye, right? After he vanquished all the demons. So he goes up in around, they say 850 or so, and he does battle against all the local Bo religions, tantric battle, kind of mystical, demonic fighting, and he conquers them by showing the superiority of Buddhist Tantra. Right. So it is said that when Buddhist Tantra, all the Bon priests, all the Bon teachers all bowed to him, and they all became tantrics in the Buddhist tradition, right? In this new tradition that he was concocting of Buddhist Tantra, which was already happening with the Siddhas all over North India, but he was really the founding father of the Vajrayana thing, that we know about. And by the time he gets there, he becomes something known as the Snow Lion. And this is when they start calling him Guru Rinpoche. So you see the mustache stays the same. He had the same beautiful mustache the whole time. But he gets to Samye, and this is a sculpture in Samye now, right? And he vanquishes, and there he meets another tantrika, yogini of the Bon religion, who has also become a Buddhist, who is lived to 100 years apparently. And she was a living goddess in her own right, a Dakini, right? A Dakini. They used to call them Dakinis, right? And her name was Yeshe Sogyal. Yeah. Yeshe Sogyal was the mother of Tantric Buddhism and he and her become one. They become a single teacher at the monastery at Samye, right? And it is said that she was actually greater than him in her power. And now there are monasteries to her all over Tibet still, right? You can go and find her. And her name, funnily enough, was Jnanasagara, right? Which means, we know Dattatreya is also Jnanasagara, the endless infinite ocean of bliss, right? The infinite lake of wisdom, the queen of the Dakinis. This woman was an amazing tantric power at that time, right? Now it is said that she knew magic. So she would transport them by turning into a tigress and fly to all kinds of places. And it is famously known that she flew to Bhutan with him because there was a lot of persecution in Samye in the 9th century, 10th century. So they flew to Bhutan and they would meditate in caves. And one of those and this is they founded this school in Samye, right? This is in Bhutan, right? So they founded similar schools in Bhutan, and so they've both founded what is called the Nyingma school, right? Nyingma school, which is the school that we now know today as the school of Vajrayana, Vajra Tantra, and the different compassion schools of Avalokiteshvara all come from this school, right? They were one of the 4 major schools of Tibet. This was the first one. They founded it. And today, if you go to Bhutan, every year they do ritual dances called the Cham dance, where they reenact all of Guru Rinpoche's great adventures and all the battles he fought against the Bon and all the flying he did with the Yeshe, all the things he did. They still do it today, right? And it is said that what they developed was a school of Tantra, which was very secretive and still is very secretive. That's why this part of Tibetan Buddhism is hard to be initiated into, right? Which is called Dzogchen and the Mahamudra path. This is the path of the Mahasiddhis, right? So if you think about it, it's very similar to Shaivism, Kashmir Shaivism. It's a kind of non-dual Tantra, which includes physical, body, includes mental, and includes astral, spiritual, right? All 3 parts. All 3 are called Vajras. So a Vajra, as you will see, actually means a diamond path. That means we have 3 diamonds in our body, 3 diamonds, one in our lower part, one in our consciousness and heart, and one in our head, the 3 suns basically. And the Dzogchen tradition is the tradition to awaken that using very similar techniques to Kundalini Shakti. Okay? Very similar, almost identical. And the Siddhis that practiced this were also eccentric, weird yogis that traveled around all of the northern plains. So just like we have yogis traveling around India and yogis in South India, same time, yogis are traveling around practicing. Look at the pictures, all Kundalini related. Ida Pingala, fire above, right? There's the Buddha. And this is continuous stories going on of the Dzogchen school, right? Of achieving through the body, through the spirit, through the mind, into those states of ultimate consciousness of the Buddha nature, right? So it became a Tantra of Buddhism, right? As can be thought of today. So before I go into what Vajrayana means, the end game may have been different, right? The end game being, I'm going to achieve shunyata as the Buddha described, or I'm going to achieve Bhairav and Brahman as the Vedas or the Tantras of India decide, right? I'm going to achieve union in different ways, through my body, through my sexuality, through my energy, through my all these things. How many paths are there, right? And this form of Tantra that we see, thank God that they did this form of Tantra, because it died in the rest of India, you know. In South India, it continued as Sri Vidya and later cleaned up nicely. But this sexual, energetic, cremation ground, give up your life, become sacred, be fearless, go deep into the inner work and transform your body, then purification, transform your mind, purification, transform your spirit, boom, and go to the other side, really continued because of Vajrayana in Tibet, you know. Thank God, you know, because Kashmir Shaivism was crushed by the 12th century. Kashmir was completely Islamic by the 12th century, right? All the Hindus would do household prayer worship and that's it, nothing else. So if you wanted to discover this kind of Tantra, in the 12th century onwards, you'd have to go to South India or you'd have to go to the Himalayas. And in the Himalayas, it had already lost its power, right? The Chandi paths and all were revived later. But it was kept going in Tibet and Bhutan and Nepal. Right? So today, if you go to Nepal or Bhutan, you will see a living Tantra as a way of life.